What's up, family? Welcome back to the Stop Sinking Show, where we go from struggle to flow. One of the many harsh, inconvenient truths that I live by, a litmus test by which I have judged my value for a very long time, is by this question. Are you lifting a burden or are you adding to it? I think I did an episode all the way back to like episode 18 titled this exact thing. In my mind, this is a binary question. You are either lifting a burden or you are adding to it. I'm going to say a lot of things today about this concept. And while it may make you think that I am contradicting this statement, I am not. And you will see what I mean. I don't think there's two ways about this question. And I definitely try to pass this and check this from the standpoint of tying my self-worth to what I do. And again, you will see how it's not just about doing, how being can also lead to you lifting a burden. Just being, without having to do anything. And no, this is not a green light for you to justify adding a burden. Even your being is going to be tested by this parameter. We don't get away with the requirement of carrying a load as a human. And either you are carrying a load or you are leaving that load to be carried by somebody else, on top of what they might already have to carry. In some real practical ways, our common enemy is the threat to our survival. And as humans, even in our cozy condos and air-conditioned silk sheets, where survival does not seem to be at risk, even there, maybe even especially there, it needs to be explicit how and that you are helping to carry whatever load is left. If not, you literally go against our human design, which leads to the aimless, disenfranchised state that most of us have found ourselves in. No purpose, no requirement to fight for survival, no aim, and so very little genuine positive emotion. Sure, you might have very little downside, as you have been safeguarded by the depths of negative emotion, but that's not exactly going to lead to happiness and fulfillment either. And in a world where we are not being forced to exert ourselves as much, where technology, tools, and our tribe carries much of the load already, it becomes even more important to make this a voluntary pursuit. Or don't expect to feel the range of human emotions. Don't expect to feel human at all. And if you're fine with that, then you can just stop listening now. I'll come back to laboring the importance of carrying a burden later. First, let me tell you the thinking behind why I said that sometimes your being, without any doing, can carry a burden in itself. This should at the least attract the low desire for effort crowd. That maybe there is an easy way to contribute to your tribe, to your community, without actually having to do much. And on the surface, while I am proposing that this is possible, when you go deeper, you will see that there's still a responsibility that you carry here, no matter how much of the heavy lifting being done is by your actual hands or not. Here's what I mean by that you can actually lift a burden while just being. I realized, out of my own helplessness, inability to be there physically, through not my lack of willingness, but the sheer constraints of proximity, through sheer physical limitations, I've realized that sometimes there is power in just your presence. That sometimes not being able to be there to do something doesn't mean you can't be there to be. And sometimes just being there is in itself the lifting of the burden. Now, that never sat well with me before because of my own story that's possibly rooted in trauma that says a man is only what he does, what he can do. And there's a real visceral part of me that cannot shed this idea completely. I do believe that. But I realized, if you want to put it this way, sometimes all you can do, or sometimes even the best that you can do, even if other doing was possible, sometimes the best that you can do is just to be there. You know, there were many times in caring for my father through his treatment where I felt useless. When there was no more regular doctor visits and very few caretaker activities like just organizing his medicine, and I'm still living in another country with him, having left my entire life behind, I couldn't reconcile what exact value am I actually even adding. Like literally, I felt like a burden on those days, in those times when I couldn't see how I was directly contributing. Like, why am I even here? I'm not doing anything for you. And I'm also not able to do much for myself. It felt like I was just wasting my time. And on top of it, adding weight onto someone else, which only made my frustration even worse. And now that I have abruptly had to assess the summation of that story, I realized the real value was in me just being there. It wasn't doing anything. The real peace that I have today wasn't in the things I got to do. Because all those things, all those treatments, all that doctor stuff didn't end up doing anything. It was just the fact that I got to be in the presence of my father for those 1,000 days. It was a 1,000-day gift, even though I couldn't see it. Just being there to live in the gift was the actual gift. I didn't have to give anything. I just had to be there to receive it. And now my mother reminds me of this at times, even while I continue to struggle to feel like a burden. Like I don't know what to do for her now that she's alone. And more than 90% of the day, we don't interact. We maybe speak a few words to each other in a day because I'm either sleeping while she's awake or at the gym or working at my desk. Again, if I measure myself by what I do for her, I'm doing nothing. I'm probably failing at all the doings. I can probably do so much more. She deserves so much more. But she still never fails to remind me that even when I tell her this, like, I'm sorry I don't know how to support you. I wish I had more life around the house, kids or things to keep her busy and joy. She reminds me how much peace she feels and how much weaker she would feel, literally a lack of power and strength, if it wasn't just for my presence. She reminds me that just me being present here, just her knowing that I am here, gives her comfort. Even if I'm in the other room or not able to see her or I'm sleeping, just her knowing that I'm in the house makes her feel safe and gives her a level of comfort. And in some ways, I want to tell myself that's enough. But while I know I can do more and will, it's still comforting to know that no matter where you are, as long as you are present, that you might just be doing all the things you can do from that place, just by being. Sometimes just being on the phone with someone when you can't be there physically, or just being there in the back of their mind as a respite, as a place for them to rest, a place where they can take a break, a place where they know they can reach for to be safe in. If you can just be that for people without even doing anything, just be an open, safe space, a listening ear, just that in itself lifts more of a burden off of them than you can think. It literally lightens their load. Sometimes you thinking you being a burden is actually taking a burden off of the other person because you are present. Now, let me quickly make my last point of why I think carrying a load is important. Why you must aspire to lift burdens. Or forget aspiration. Let me tell you the real physical requirement, the actual need that you have to carry a load, without which you will be off balance, no matter what you say, because you will be going against your own human makeup, your own human physiology. I'll give you an example from the gym. If you ever squatted before, ever done air squats in the house even, you will feel a huge difference between doing air squats with no weight on your back or hands, just body weight squats, versus doing weighted barbell squats, for example. There's a clear difference that you feel. For you to reach depth, for you to reach your full mobility, you literally need a counteracting balance on your back or in your hands. If you try to squat without any weights, you literally will not be able to go as deep without losing balance and falling forward. You will not have access to your mobility. You literally need a load to carry on your back to offset the weight distribution as you bend down and your torso leans forward. Or you will fail. Or only go down very little, unless you have great yoga mobility in your ankles and hips already, which means you have already done some of that burdening to build that. I'll end with summarizing the takeaway. While we all have different load-bearing capacities, you may be able to lift more of a burden than I can, while we are all built or have built ourselves to shoulder different levels of burdens. While we all have different capacities, very few of us have zero. We all need something to bear, just to be able to balance, to reach depth, to have access to all your mobility. And sometimes all you have to do to bear it is be present. I love you, family. Stay true always. I'll see you on the next show.